My aunt drained my life savings and then told the whole town I was selfish, so I used her own forgotten secret to publicly destroy her. Can you imagine spending 15 years of your life sacrificing, working double shifts until your feet ache and your soul feels thin, saving every single spare dollar for a dream that feels like the only thing you've ever truly wanted for yourself? Can you imagine waking up one morning to find it all gone, stolen not by a stranger, but by the one person you trusted to be your safe harbor? Because that's what happened to me. My name is Olivia. I'm 35 years old. I'm an ER nurse in a small town in Ohio where the cornfields stretch farther than your patience. And this is the story of how I lost my savings, my family, and finally found myself. It all started with a house. A small, white-clapboard house on Elm Street, with a wraparound porch and a slightly crooked shutter on an upstairs window. It was nothing special to anyone else, but to me, it was everything. It was the physical manifestation of a future I was trying to build for myself, a future where I wasn't just Olivia the nurse, or Olivia the responsible one. A future where I could finally rest. For 15 years, since my first day of nursing school, I had been funneling money into a high-yield savings account at Chase. Every overtime shift, every holiday I worked, every time I packed a sad little salad for lunch instead of buying it, it all went into the house fund. I watched the number grow with a fierce, quiet pride. It had just crossed $62,000. It was finally enough for a down payment. The house on Elm Street came up for sale, and it felt like a sign. I had my pre-approval letter. I was ready. I woke up that Tuesday morning with a rare flutter of excitement in my chest. I was going to call the realtor after my shift. I logged into my banking app, just to look at the number one more time, to feel that little jolt of accomplishment. But the number wasn't there. Where it should have said $62,417.82, it said $417.82. The screen blurred. My heart did a sick, violent lurch into my throat. For a second, I thought it was a glitch. A server error. My brain simply could not process the information. I refreshed the app. Again. And again. The number stayed the same. A cold dread, slick and oily, spread through my limbs, starting in my fingertips and toes and moving inward. My breath hitched. It was gone. All of it. My first thought was fraud. I'd been hacked. I called the bank's fraud department, my voice a high, tight wire of panic I could barely control. I explained the situation to a calm, professional voice on the other end of the line. He put me on hold. The tinny music felt like a personal insult. My hands were trembling so badly I had to put my phone on speaker and set it on the kitchen counter. I gripped the cool laminate, my knuckles turning white, just to ground myself. When the man came back on the line, his voice was different. Cautious. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I'm looking at the transaction history. There was a single withdrawal for $62,000 made yesterday." "Yes," I said, my voice cracking. "That's what I'm telling you. I didn't do that." "Ma'am," he continued, "the withdrawal wasn't made online. It was an in-person, cashier's check withdrawal made at the branch in town. According to our records, the withdrawal was processed for the other signatory on the account." The world stopped. The other signatory. There was only one other person on my savings account, my Aunt Debbie. My Aunt Debbie wasn't just my aunt. She was my second mother. My own mom, bless her heart, was a creature of anxiety and nerves, perpetually overwhelmed by life. It was Debbie who had taught me how to braid my hair, who took me school shopping, who held my hand when I got my wisdom teeth out. When I was 18 and setting up my first real bank account, she had been there. "Put me on it, Liv," she'd said, her voice warm and practical. "Just in case of emergency. If something ever happens to you, someone needs to be able to get to your money for you." It made sense. It was an act of love, of care. I hadn't thought about it in years. "Who?" I whispered into the phone, even though I already knew. "The name on the account is Deborah Miller." I hung up without another word. The numbness was receding, replaced by a churning, sickening wave of disbelief and hurt, so profound it felt like a physical injury. Debbie. My Debbie. It wasn't possible. There had to be a mistake. A reason. A logical, sane explanation that would make the world snap back into focus. I drove the 10 minutes to her house in a fog. Her house was a cozy brick ranch, the kind with perfectly manicured flower beds. It always smelled like coffee and cinnamon. It was a place I'd run to my entire life when my own home felt too chaotic. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my cousin Mark's beat-up Ford Ranger parked out front. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. Mark was Debbie's only son, a black hole of bad decisions and perpetual crises. He was 33, but he had the life skills of a teenager. DUIs, failed business ideas, gambling debts. Debbie was always bailing him out, her love for him a fierce, blind, all-consuming fire. I walked to the front door, my legs feeling like lead. My heart hammered against my ribs. Please let there be a reason. Please don't let this be what I think it is. Debbie opened the door, a dish towel in her hand. Her smile, usually so warm, faltered when she saw my face. Olivia. Honey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. The money, I said, my voice hoarse. My savings account. It's empty. She didn't look surprised. The lack of surprise was a confession. She just sighed a weary, put-upon sound, and her shoulders slumped. Oh, that. I was going to call you. Come in. I stepped into her living room. Mark was slouched on the couch, staring at the TV, pointedly not looking at me. The air was thick with a guilty, cloying tension. We had an emergency, Liv, Debbie began, wringing the dish towel in her hands. Mark got himself into a bit of a jam again. Some very insistent people were calling. A jam, I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. A $62,000 jam? Mark flinched on the couch but didn't turn around. He made a mistake, Debbie said, her voice turning defensive sharp. He got in over his head. They were going to hurt him, Olivia. What was I supposed to do? Let them break my son's legs over a stupid bet. I stared at her, my mind reeling. She was admitting it. Just like that. She had taken my entire future and given it to a bookie to save her screw-up son from the consequences of his own actions. So you just took my money? I asked, my voice trembling with a rage that was starting to burn through the shock. My entire life savings? Without even asking me. I'm asking you now, she snapped, her eyes flashing. We'll pay you back. It's a loan. Mark is going to get a second job. We'll make it right. My God, Olivia, don't be so dramatic. It's just money. This is my son's life. It's just money. The 4 words echoed in the suddenly silent room. 15 years of my life. 15 years of exhaustion and sacrifice and dreaming, dismissed as just money. I looked from her hard, defensive face to the back of my cousin's head. He still hadn't moved. He couldn't even be bothered to face me. My mouth said nothing, but my chest felt like it was caving in. The fawn response, the one I'd perfected in a lifetime of de-escalating family drama, took over. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked out the door, my legs on autopilot. I got back in my Honda CR-V, the one with 180,000 miles on it that I'd been meaning to replace for years, and drove home. I sat on my couch in my rented apartment, the one with the leaky faucet and the neighbors who fought all the time, and I felt a profound sense of psychological vertigo. The person I trusted most in the world had just robbed me, and then told me I was being dramatic for being upset. The gaslighting was so complete, so audacious, it broke my brain. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my chest. I had spent my life being the responsible one, the one who cleaned up messes, the one who never asked for anything. And the one time I build something for myself, the family just sees it as another resource to be plundered for the problem child. I made the mistake of calling my dad. My father, Alan, is a good man, but his defining characteristic is a pathological avoidance of conflict. He wants peace at any cost. I told him everything, my voice breaking over and over. I'll talk to her, sweetie, he said, his voice full of distress. Let me handle it. Debbie's reasonable. We'll sort this out. Hope, that stupid, treacherous emotion, flickered in my chest. My dad would fix it. He would be the grown-up. He would make it right. He called me back 2 hours later. Okay, he said, a note of forced cheerfulness in his voice. I had a long talk with her. She feels terrible. She reiterated that she's going to pay you back as soon as she can. As soon as she can? I asked, my stomach dropping. What does that mean? She's a receptionist at a dental office. Mark works part-time at Lowe's. They don't have $60,000, Dad. Now, Olivia, he said, his voice shifting into that placating tone I knew so well. We have to be patient. We're a family. Screaming and yelling isn't going to get the money back any faster. Debbie's very upset that you're so angry with her. You're putting her in a terrible position. I was speechless. I was putting her in a terrible position? Dad, I said, my voice dangerously low. She stole my life savings. She committed a felony. Don't use words like that, he said, his voice sharp with anxiety. It was a mistake. An emergency. You can't go around accusing your own aunt of being a criminal. Think about what that would do to this family. To your mother. Just let it go for now. Give her time." He hung up, leaving me in a stunned silence. This was the second betrayal. My own father, the man I'd hoped would stand up for me, was telling me to swallow my pain, to absorb the loss, all for the sake of keeping the peace. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself from discomfort. He was using me as a human shield to avoid a family conflict. The cost of his peace was my future, and he was asking me to pay it without complaint. The next Sunday, I saw the true cost. My mother insisted I come to church. "You need to show your face," she'd said. "People will talk if you don't." So I went. I sat in the pew, feeling the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on me. After the service, during the dreadful coffee and donuts hour in the basement, I saw why. People were looking at me with pity, or worse, with a kind of cool disapproval. My mother's friend, Carol, came up to me, her face a mask of sympathy. "Olivia, dear," she said, patting my arm. "I was so sorry to hear about your troubles." "My troubles?" I asked. "Debbie told me," she whispered, leaning in, "about how you refused to help Mark. I know you've worked hard for your money, dear, but he's your family. To turn your back on him like that, it's just heartbreaking for your aunt." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Debbie had launched a preemptive strike. She had gone on a PR tour, painting herself as the desperate mother forced to take drastic action because her cold, selfish, money-obsessed niece wouldn't help. In the small-town court of public opinion, I had already been tried and convicted. I was the villain. I saw Debbie across the room, surrounded by a sympathetic circle of church ladies, holding a paper plate of cookies, looking for all the world like a long-suffering saint. She glanced over at me, and her eyes met mine. There was no shame in them, no guilt, just a cool, defiant triumph. This was the third betrayal, the public destruction. She hadn't just stolen my money, she was stealing my name, my reputation, my place in the only community I had ever known. I fled. I ran out of the church basement, past the tables of weak coffee and stale donuts, and didn't stop until I was locked in my car, gasping for air. The pressure in my chest was immense. I was being suffocated by their lies. My own mother, when I confronted her later, just wrung her hands. "Well, you have to see it from her side," she'd said. "You do have more than she does. It's not very Christian to hoard your wealth when your family is suffering." That was it. That was the moment the hurt curdled into something else. Something hard and cold and sharp. The part of me that wanted to keep the peace, the part that was willing to be the bigger person, died in that church parking lot. They thought I was selfish. They thought I was cold. Fine. I would be. I went home and filed a police report. The officer, a guy I went to high school with, was sympathetic but realistic. "Since she was on the account, it's a civil matter, not a criminal one," he explained. "You'll have to sue her. Sue my own aunt." The words felt like acid in my mouth. But what choice did I have? I found a lawyer in a bigger city an hour away, a sharp woman named Ms. Chun who specialized in financial disputes. She told me we had a strong case, but it would be long, expensive, and messy. While the legal process slowly ground forward, I started my own investigation. I needed to understand why. Why would Debbie do this? Why risk destroying our relationship, the family? It couldn't just be about Mark. Driven by a cold, obsessive fury, I started talking to relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, distant cousins, great-aunts. I was looking for patterns, for history. The mid-story twist came from my great-aunt Susan, my grandmother's sister, a fountain of family gossip who lived in Florida. I called her under the pretense of just catching up. After about an hour of small talk, I casually mentioned the situation with Debbie. "Oh, honey," she sighed, a world of meaning in her voice. "That doesn't surprise me one bit. Debbie's had a chip on her shoulder about your side of the family for 30 years. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Your grandmother," she said. "When she passed, she left the family farm to your mother. It wasn't a big place, but it was something. Debbie got a smaller cash inheritance. She always felt your mother, the good daughter, cheated her out of her birthright. She's been bitter about it ever since. She probably sees that money she took from you as, well, as getting back what she's owed." The phone felt heavy in my hand. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just about saving Mark. This was about a deep, decades-old resentment. She wasn't just my aunt. She was a woman who saw my mother, and by extension me, as her enemy in a long-running family drama. My life savings weren't alone. In her mind, they were reparations. It was revenge. The money she stole from me was the physical manifestation of a jealousy and rage that had been festering for my entire life. She felt the world owed her, and she had decided to make me the one to pay the debt. Knowing this changed everything. My grief for the woman I thought was my aunt finally evaporated. She was gone. In her place was a stranger, a bitter, greedy woman who had used my love and trust as a weapon against me. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no peace. This was a war now, and I was going to win. But the lawsuit was slow. And in the meantime, the house on Elm Street got an offer. I saw the sale pending sign go up on my way home from a grueling 14-hour shift, and something inside me snapped. I pulled over to the side of the road and I wept. Not quiet, sad tears, but huge, ugly, gulping sobs of pure rage and despair. That was my house, my future, and it was gone. That night, something shifted. The despair burned away, leaving a core of pure, unadulterated resolve. If I couldn't have that house, I would have justice. I would burn it all to the ground. I remembered something my dad had asked me to do a few months before all this happened. He was trying to downsize and had given me boxes of old family documents to sort through. "You're the organized one," he'd said. I had shoved them in my spare room closet and forgotten about them. Fueled by a desperate last-ditch hope, I tore into those boxes. They were full of old tax returns, car titles, my childhood report cards. It was a dusty, depressing tour through my family's very boring history. I spent 2 whole days, my hands covered in paper dust, my eyes gritty from lack of sleep. And then, at the bottom of the very last box, in a faded accordion file labeled Financial, I found it. It was a single-page document, typed on an old typewriter. A promissory note, dated 1994. It was a formal loan agreement between my father, Alan Hayes, and Debbie's late husband, Uncle Frank. The amount was for $50,000. The terms were clear: repayment over 10 years at a low interest rate. The purpose was for Uncle Frank's landscaping business, a venture I vaguely remembered failing spectacularly. At the bottom were 2 signatures, my father's and Uncle Frank's. I stared at the document, my heart hammering. I did a quick calculation in my head. A $50,000 loan from 1994, with interest, even low interest, compounded over almost 30 years. It would be worth well over 6 figures today. They had never paid it back. My kind, conflict-avoidant father had just let it go. He had eaten a massive financial loss to avoid an awkward conversation with his sister-in-law. And Debbie, her whole narrative, the one she told herself and the whole town, was that our side of the family had gotten everything and cheated her. But the truth was the exact opposite. Her family was the one in debt. Her bitterness wasn't righteous. It was a cover for her own family's failure and shame. This document was the final twist. This was the emotional checkmate. It wasn't just proof of a debt. It was proof of her lie. It was a bomb, and I was holding the detonator. My mother called me a few days later. "We're having a family dinner on Sunday," she announced, no room for argument. "Debbie and Mark are coming. It's time to put all this ugliness behind us and be a family again. And I expect you to be on your best behavior." "My best behavior?" I asked, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. "Oh, don't you worry, Mom. I'll be perfect." The dinner was a masterclass in passive aggression. It was held at my parents' house, the air thick with unspoken tension. Debbie arrived wearing a new coat, an unsubtle display of her newfound liquidity. She and my mother hugged like long-lost sisters. Mark skulked in behind her, refusing to make eye contact. My father hovered nervously by the cheese plate, his face a mask of forced joviality. We sat down at the dining room table, the one we used for holidays. My mother had made her pot roast, the official meal of family truces. For a while, the conversation was painfully stilted. The weather, high school football. Then Debbie looked at me, a syrupy sweet smile on her face. "Olivia," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I saw the sold sign on that little house on Elm Street. It's a shame you couldn't get your finances in order in time. But don't you worry. Money isn't everything." The room went silent. It was a direct, vicious jab, meant to humiliate me, to cement her victory. My mother shot me a warning look. "Be nice." My father looked down at his plate. "Don't make a scene." This was it. The moment. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. The part of me that would have shrunk, that would have murmured a non-committal mum, was gone. "You're right, Debbie," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Money isn't everything. But integrity is. And you don't have any." Debbie's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." Oh, I think you do, I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The promissory note. I unfolded it and placed it on the table. I was doing some cleaning for Dad. I found this. It seems you're a little confused about which side of the family owes the other money. My dad looked at the paper, and all the color drained from his face. Olivia, don't. No, Dad. I said, my voice rising, the dam of my restraint finally breaking. I'm done. I am done being the family shock absorber. I am done setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I turned my attention back to Debbie. You stole $62,000 from me. 15 years of my life. And you did it because you've been nursing a bitter, pathetic grudge for 30 years over a lie. A lie you told yourself to avoid facing the truth. That your husband was a bad businessman and your son is a leech. How dare you? Debbie shrieked, jumping to her feet. Frank was a good man, and my son needed help. It's just money, Olivia. Family is more important. You are not my family, I roared, the sound ripping from my throat, raw and full of a lifetime of suppressed rage. A family doesn't steal from you. A family doesn't lie to you. A family doesn't assassinate your character to your entire community. You are a thief, and I have the receipts. I slapped my hand down on the promissory note. This proves you owe my father, conservatively, over $100,000. But you know what? He's too nice to collect. But I'm not. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the wood floor. So here's the new deal. My lawyer will be drawing up a settlement. You're going to repay my $62,000 in full, with interest, within 30 days. You'll sell your car. You'll cash out your 401k. I don't care how you do it. If you don't, this promissory note, along with the full story of your fraud, goes to every newspaper in the state. And I will sue you into bankruptcy. Am I clear? Debbie stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. Her face, which had been red with rage, was now a pasty, terrified white. Mark looked like he was going to be sick. My mother was openly weeping. My father just sat there, his head in his hands, a broken man. I looked at all of them, at the wreckage of my family sitting around a pot roast. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No victory. Just a vast, hollow emptiness. I'm done, I said again, my voice quiet now. I walked out of the house, out of their lives, and I didn't look back. That was 6 months ago. Debbie, faced with total ruin, paid me back. She had to take out a second mortgage on her house. I heard from a cousin that she and my mother are no longer speaking. The family, the one my father was so desperate to protect, shattered anyway. I took the money, and I went back to the old man who owned the house on Elm Street. I told him the whole story. He listened patiently. The next day, he called me. The other buyer's financing had fallen through. The house was mine if I wanted it. I'm sitting on the porch of that house right now, my house, watching the fireflies start to blink in the humid Ohio dusk. The shutter is still crooked. I kind of like it that way. The psychological wound of being the designated caregiver, the one whose needs always came last, is still there. It's a scar, but it doesn't hurt anymore. That night, at that dinner table, I didn't just reclaim my money. I reclaimed my voice. I reclaimed my right to be angry, my right to take up space, my right to have a dream that belonged only to me. The girl who would have swallowed her pain to keep the peace is gone forever. And in her place is a woman who owns her own house. A woman who is, for the first time in her life, gloriously, completely, and peacefully alone. So, I want to ask you all a question. For everyone out there who has been the peacemaker, the responsible one, the caregiver, what was the moment you realized that your own peace was worth more than the family's illusion of it? Share your stories in the comments. Knowing I'm not the only one who has had to make that impossible choice makes this big, quiet house feel a little less lonely. And if you want to follow along as I figure out what comes next, please consider subscribing.